Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Justin Sloan with me. Justin is the founder of Sloan Capital, and one of the things that I think you're going to find really intriguing about his story is when you understand what it takes to get to a certain level of success or accomplishment, it's very transferable. And he's been able to transfer that across many different industries. And so, Justin, thanks so much for being on today, my man.
Thank you, Phil. Good to meet you.
Yeah. So to start your story off, as a teenager, you decide, hey, I want to make some money, and there's a store in the mall that sells cell phones. I could probably go do that. So talk a little bit about what the motivation was from a young standpoint to go get a job and start earning your own money.
Yeah, so I was already working in a mall at 16 years old, in the Sears lawn and garden department, which was good in Iowa because, every time the first snow came, everyone ran in there to buy their snow blowers. But, on my break, I'd walk through the rest of the mall and there was, Radio Shack, and this starts to date me here a little bit. But and I was a geek. I loved computers. I loved technology. I loved the idea. And so within too long, I was working at Radio Shack in the mall. And I worked there for a year and a half and some, and, at Radio Shack, 90% of what we did was, a little diode for this or a little repair piece for this. But then they started selling cell phones. And I really realized that, hey, the more I could sell 10,000 of these little pieces and make some commission, or I could sell one cell phone and make more commission.
Yeah.
And so I started really getting into realizing that even if somebody came in here and they wanted a TV, maybe we should bring up the fact that there's cell phones. And I got pretty good, and was the number one salesperson in the store for cell phones and all that kind of stuff. But the problem was I wasn't even 18. I was 17, selling these cell phones. I couldn't even get my own contract. So I had to go to another spot in the mall and do prepay cell phone, because this was back in the days where there was only one or two prepay companies. Yeah. Everything else was big contracts and all that. So before I know it, I am working and just exclusively selling cell phones for the company that I have, and fell in love with it and was really good at it and was lucrative because nobody had cell phones, and ended up taking that and running with it, opening some of my own stores, building it into a good sized company. And, from selling phones in the mall at 17 as a high schooler to by 20 had my first store open, and continued to scale it from there.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So at 20 years old, you decide, hey, I'm starting to really understand this industry, and I, like it. I'm good at it. Let's do this. Now, I don't know a ton about your parental upbringing, but I would be curious to know, what were some of the maybe older folks in your life? What were their thoughts on 20-year-old Justin taking every dollar and going and saying, hey, I'm going to start this business now?
Yeah, so it was definitely you better go to college. You have the only chance to success is through college, all that kind of stuff. And actually, right out of high school, I did go to college. I planned on, getting into the computer industry. Like I said, I liked technology. At that point, I was running one of the cell phone stores. So I had some experience that had been there a couple years. And it just kind of became the next natural step of, if I'm doing this for somebody else, why wouldn't I consider doing it for myself? But you're absolutely right. Everybody and their brother said, don't do this. It's guaranteed. Because not only was I doing it, and I was going to be the only employee. I mean, I'm not joking when I say I took every penny out. I actually had a little bit of a 401k from working corporate.
Yeah.
And I cleared that out, paid the penalties, cleared that out. Bought some slat wall, bought some cases, and designed my store with the money that we had, and got to work. But at the end of the day, the store wasn't the location was important. The inside of the store, it was most important. What is the service that we can give? What's the things that we can do? And I really believed that I, could create relationships and provide better service and better sales than anybody else could. And that's exactly what happened.
So there's two things I want to go into there. We'll start with the first one, and that is, oftentimes in life, right, we're talking about it in the scope of you starting a business, but I mean, this could be a lot of different things. It could be a relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be which job to choose. But we get posed with this scenario where maybe we feel one way, certain people in our life are going to give us their opinion. And then we have to decide what's the right choice. And I think something that happens all too frequently is we go to people we trust, even though they have no expertise in the matter that we would like to get their opinion on. So, talk a little bit about that for someone that's listening, that's trying to make a decision right now, and they're saying, I feel this, and someone else feels that, and there's this opinion, and I'm just having a tough time making the right choice.
Yeah, so I think it's really easy to go with the herd, right?
Mm.
It is very hard to stand up when everybody's going in one direction. It's really hard to go in the other direction because there's just that extreme force that happens.
Yeah.
And it happens in business, it happens in investing. If you think about the waves of investing over the last couple of years, think about how everyone and their brother wanted to buy real estate 6 months ago, but now nobody wants to buy it now.
Yeah.
So if you look at, if you were to listen to everybody else, they would have told you to buy 6 months ago, but the actual answer was to sell 6 months ago. And to be buying right now when nobody wants to buy and everything's dropped 20, 30%, this is the opportunity to buy stuff. And you have to go against the groove. So I've just naturally done that my entire life, even to the point of, during pandemic and having to stand up for my employees and what their rights are and taking care of them and making sure that I didn't, and the pain that caused from having to go against the crowd during certain situations. But it's just been my life. When I started my first cell phone store, everyone said, don't do it, you're going to lose everything. So I built a big business. And then everyone said, don't buy real estate. Being a landlord is the worst thing in the entire world. And I said, no, you being a landlord is the worst thing in the entire world. So I started buying real estate. And then the pandemic hits. Guess what I did? Everyone starts closing down restaurants, and idiot Justin over here buys the rights to a restaurant company, and we've opened 5 in the last 14 months. And everyone said, don't do that. But the reality is when everyone says don't do something, that usually means that's where the options are. Even right now, everyone says don't open a business. Interest rates are up, employees are up, inflation. Yeah. So what are we doing? We are beating up landlords more than we ever could have because nobody else wants to. So we're getting prime leases, prime locations, prime spots. And it's just a matter of, if we believe in our end goal, we know what we're doing, then I don't care what the noise is, because those people and that noise, they want me to be like them. They don't want anyone to question their thought process, because if I do something different, it means they're doing something wrong. And the reality is we can all win on our own paths.
Yeah.
We don't all need to win on the same path. We can all take our own journeys. We can all take our own ventures and still get to the place that we want to get to.
Well, I really like what you said there, that if I go against what they said, it's wrong. That's not always true, right? It might be wrong for them, but it might be right for me. And so I think that's a really good differentiator there. That's awesome. Now, additionally, as you were talking about getting your business started, there's just a lot of risks involved in starting a business. So, 20 years old, I'm emptying the bank account, and I'd love to say that every business, first week, first month, it just crushes sales, and all of a sudden, you're rolling in the dough, have no financial concerns. Oftentimes, that's not the way it works. There's this like lag period where it's like, ooh, this is a little bit harder than what I thought it was going to be, or man, this wasn't as profitable as I thought it was going to be. So talk about just those beginning few months of getting your business up and running.
Yeah. So fortunately, I had enough information about what other stores did in sales, and I could kind of create some trajectories or some, runway ideas about what it would take and where we could get to. And I knew what I would get paid on the phones. So the most important thing is to build the model before I even sign the lease, right? Essentially, if I think we're going to make 15 grand gross, and I've got 2 grand in rent, and we've got 7 grand for employee, whatever, break it down. Is there money left at the end for those first months? And then what happens as we ramp it? When do you add another team member? When do you add a district manager? When do you add an accountant, a bookkeeper? As you grow, what are the people that you're going to need to put in place to grow those? But the way that I grow businesses and the way that I start businesses is it's really just looking at other people that are doing the same thing and then taking good ideas from all of them, right? One of the reasons that I've become a pretty successful landlord and building owner is I've been a tenant a lot. I've been a tenant in a lot of different strip malls with a lot of landlords. And so I get to see what a good landlord looks like.
Yeah.
What happens when you're up for renewal? What happens when there's a problem with the building? What happens when XYZ, right? And through that, I'm able to then take my experiences and transfer them into being better for our tenants to create them better places to do business in. And so as I've gone into different businesses, and even back in 15-ish years ago, when I was 20 years old starting the cell phone business, I still have my first business plan typed up at 20, and man, it looks awful. But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
It's either, I could be 30 some starting my first business and going through the same thing, or I can be 20 something and going through my first business. No matter what, nobody's going to get it perfect the first time.
Yep.
The most important thing was that we actually got it started.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so important. I think there's two pieces with that. One is that it's good to have some form of a plan, right? You don't just want to completely shoot from the hip. At the same token, you don't want to be so focused on getting the thing 100% right that it prevents you from taking action, because the reality is it's never going to be 100% right until you get customer or client feedback, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when you can adjust it and make it right. So I think that's a really good, important highlight there. That's great.
Yeah. And then giving yourself a lot of different paths. Something I was just thinking of that we're doing right now is in these early businesses, not having a single path to revenue, but having a bunch of paths to revenue. In cell phones, we didn't just wait for people to walk into our stores and buy phones. We were out working with businesses and creating relationships and contract. We'd find core groups of people and lean towards them to help duplicate. And even as we're opening the restaurants right now, we're going into territories where people have no idea what our brand is, who we are. All of our competitors sit back and wait for people, whereas we're always out there catering, drop-offs, third party, doing partnerships with other business, all this kind of stuff that we can to create the most paths forward to revenue, not just a single one. Because I agree with you completely that I see a lot of people start a business and it's like, here's my one path to victory. And the second you hit a speed bump or a brick wall, and that happens every day, right? Yep. Every business is just how many times you're going to get hit by a bus that day. Get ready for it, and you better be ready to pivot.
Yeah, well, and I think that as I hear you say that, and I think and reflect on my own life, there's in the beginning, I think it's true that you probably do need to have a lot of different ways to make this one thing work. And then as you start dialing in on that, you can split into that one in very intentionally focused area. Because, as I hear you talk about, and we'll get into Everbolts here in a minute, but as I hear you talk about that business model, yeah, you say, well, gosh, if my only route to revenue is for them to come to the store, if people don't show up, like I'm just not going to make money, and that will be that. But if I get creative and I reach out to businesses and say, hey, we're willing to do a 20% discount on your first catering event and come show up. Well, all of a sudden, yeah, we still have people that can come into the store, but we're also generating a new path of people to come into the store because we're getting in front of them. So I think that's really good.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more that you can do to let people know, it doesn't matter if you have the best business in the entire world. It doesn't matter if nobody knows you're there. So
bingo. I love it. Now, as you're growing the cell phone business, you also decide, hey, this real estate thing is kind of intriguing, which is probably not too crazy, seeing as how you're needing to get storefront, right? You're starting to dabble in real estate in regards to the business and how it's growing. So talk about, how real estate became something that you decided you wanted to get into and what that looked like in the beginning.
Yeah, I like that you are talking as if I had a lot of options to find other business. Because the truth is I built this pretty good sized cell phone company. Yeah. And then the company that I was selling made some really bad business decisions. Okay. They weren't upgrading their towers the way that they need to. Apple then refused to sell them the iPhone. We lost 30% of our customers in a short period of time. And this company that I had all my eggs in this basket, that basket tipped over really, really quick. And I went from, hey, let's go open more cell phone stores to let's go run and hide and cry in a corner. Yeah. But rather than cry in a corner, it was, hey, we're still making some money. We've got some money saved. What are other businesses that we could potentially look at diversification, right? Because when you're in your early 20s and you're building something, you don't think about diversification, right? You don't think about the idea that, I'm in that business every day, 7 days a week. I'm there. I know this it can never fail. We
Yeah.
are so strong, but you don't realize that there's always outside forces that can happen, right? We saw it in the pandemic and how that affects things. And there's all these different things and interest rates and how this affects things. And I went through a phase where the company that was the great company became the awful company.
Mm.
And I had all of my eggs in that basket. So I quickly started to say, hey, I'm not going to open more cell phone stores, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. I don't, I'm going to continue to own these stores, but maybe I could find some other stuff. But I didn't want stuff that would take my time during the day, right?
Yeah.
So I start doing, everything, right? I'm learning about municipal bonds. I'm talking to other franchisees, other companies. And I happened to be out in Philadelphia and talking with my cousin's husband. And he said, well, like every rich person I ever know owns real estate. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, I still have this business. I don't have time to go, in the properties and all this kind of stuff. And I was so naive that he looks at me and goes, well, why don't you hire a property manager? And I literally had no idea what a property manager was, because the strip
Yeah.
malls that I was in, most of the time was owner operator strip mall. It wasn't these big firms. Maybe I was in a mall or two. That was different. But I literally, like, the bug just bit me. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, wait a minute. This makes sense to me. I buy a property for X. We budget in a property management fee. If we can get X amount of rent, and here's the repairs, and here's your vacancy, then here's what's left. Okay, that clicks. And
Mm.
I literally flew back and, absorbed months and months and months of information and did the same thing I was just talking about. I looked at all these different people that were doing it, and I would go on and I would find people that bought rental houses, and I would look at what they're renting it for and what they paid for it and who are they using for a property manager. And when I drive by the property and I would get an idea of all these kind of things. And
Yeah.
essentially I created a fantasy football of rental properties, right? Because
Yeah.
I could see all their stats. I could see what worked. I could see what didn't. And then it was time to go draft my team and put money to work, and started buying and didn't
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. Now you mentioned it earlier. You said, hey, people told me, oh, being a landlord sucks, getting in rentals sucks. Whatever it is. What I will tell people being in rental real estate myself is there are days where it sucks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just to be clear, I don't necessarily disagree with them.
Correct. Yeah. I always tell people, I'm like, Grant Cardone is so far removed from the day-to-day operations of a rental real estate business that if in year one you think, what you're hearing on his social media platform is going to be your life, you are sorely mistaken, and
Absolutely.
you are setting yourself up for failure.
Well
Now,
said.
at the same token, though, if the issues that you have to deal with aren't bad to you, they're bad to the person telling you about them, that's a whole different ballgame. So like for me, I had a person tell me I got my first property at 22, and I had someone tell me, oh, well, you're going to have to, take care of this on the weekends. And I was like, I'm a single 22-year-old guy. What else am I to do between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.? It's
Exactly.
like,
Yep.
I don't have Tommy's T-ball game. I could go do that. Like, it's not a
Bingo.
big deal. But to that person that was telling me, it would be, they would have to trade going to their son's baseball game versus working on a property. It's like,
Yep.
that's not a worthwhile trade. And it's like, hey, that's fair, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My first properties, I used to make the joke that you didn't know you weren't a landlord unless you painted 500 gallons of paint.
Yeah.
And man, I've painted 500 and probably another 500 and 500 and 500 on top of that. But the reality is, it's those reps that then make it so you become a better manager. If I've flipped dozens of properties, all sorts of different stuff. And when you go through that, you get to realize the importance of making some of these changes and why there's costs. And even like, as we're building out restaurants and stuff like that right now, getting involved in those work sites and understanding why those things change makes us better in the future too. And so, yeah, I was there for every one of those repairs. So I didn't actively manage the tenants, but when they would turn over, I would go in there and help with those.
Yeah.
And then as we grew, we then built the property management into our company.
Very cool. Now, at 32, you are able to kind of exit the cell phone business world, strictly have the real estate, and essentially retire at that point in time for a little bit.
Yeah, it was a couple years of, so my cell phone stores, they kind of ran their thing. I sold a couple. We gave one away, and it was a strip mall that I owned, so we gave it to them in return for a nice 5-year lease.
Yeah.
And I was down to my final store and, worked that store literally by myself the last month, gave away as many of the items as we could. And, we had a great run. But at the end of the day, I was able to buy enough real estate to passively be able to take care of my bills and give me a very nice life. I lived right across the street from a golf course. And so that was kind of my life for 2 years, is, getting a text message notification that one of my buddies threw my clubs on the back of a cart and he was heading to my driveway to, and that was it.
Yep.
And I golfed 80 to 100 rounds a year and, kind of turned my hobby into a job in a
Yeah.
weird way, right? I mean, I love golf now more than I do. And I think I played 10 rounds this year.
Yeah.
But it's become, because it's more rare, you get to enjoy it more. And so after a couple of years of that, it just, when you're used to building businesses and growing things and doing all of that, my highlight became like, oh, I hit it to 2 feet on number 3, right?
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, okay, I like to create jobs. I like to build businesses. I love getting ROI for my investors, for winning for other people as much as winning for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of made the shift that, okay, it was time to start having some conversations and figuring out the next path to go down.
Yeah. So you head to a conference in Arizona, and while you're at this conference there, you meet a mutual connection of ours, Jeff Fenster,
Yeah.
and that begins a new conversation.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, so this is middle of COVID, January 2021, everything is shut down to the point where the resort basically won't even host us. I mean, we have it was tough, but at the end, Fleischman puts together this amazing group of people, but 80 to 100 people, and says, listen, the world is weird right now. Let's get together for a couple days and talk about what's working and what's not, and how we can get through and grow and even win more together. And so the final day of this, I don't know if you want to call it a conference or like a meetup of some sort, mastermind, I guess is what he calls it. The final day is we're doing something offsite, have no idea where, and we all hop in some buses and we roll up to the Arizona Diamondback Stadium, and there's literally 80 of us and a stadium of whatever 80,000 empty seats, and we're on the field and we're throwing balls with the players and we're hitting, and right on the first baseline is Everbowl, and Fleischman was an early investor in the company, and I ate this bowl of whatever, I had no idea what it was, but it was good and it was tasty.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, Fenster spoke and he talked about, how the pandemic was weirdly the best thing that could have happened, because when everyone else was shuttering, that's the opportunity to go and build this brand, and talked about what they were doing. And it became, I hate to say it because it sounds really silly, but it became like a Slumdog Millionaire moment in a weird way. I have I know business. I've opened retail businesses. I've scaled. I've done it across large geographic areas. So I know leasing like the back of my hand. I have dozens of tenants. I own lots of buildings. I know it from the landlord side. I know it from the tenant side. And so if I take all the skill set that I have, we can end up creating a lot of jobs, serving a lot of healthy meals, making impacts, and then doing so in a way that's really great for our investors, our friends, our family, and meaningful. And so within a week or two, I was back on a plane to San Diego. I was in every store as much as I could. Literally within a couple of days of that, I'm scooping bowls and just, again, getting into the grind of it, of figuring out what makes this business move. And then from there, it was all in. When everything lines up, when you've got the opportunity, you've got the skill set, you've got the whatever, you just say yes.
Yeah. Now, when you're evaluating different investment opportunities, right, there's a whole bunch of different franchises that you could have went with. There's a whole bunch of different restaurants somebody could open. But for some reason, Everbowl stood out to you. And just knowing Jeff, one of the biggest things is oftentimes it's the mission behind the franchise, right? It's not just opening a taco shop because tacos sell. There is a whole mission and culture behind Everbowl. So talk about that, or what about, the two of you, whether it's personalities or mission, vision, really aligned.
Yeah, I mean, it is his mission, it's his vision, and I am very happy to be strapped on the outside of this rocket ship, holding on. But I mean, at the end of the day, what they're doing is not an accident, and you've met him. Probably had this is very intentional.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to do something that I've never seen in all of the investments, which is make healthy eating cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I almost get goosebumps when I think about how much our world would be different if eating things that were good for you was cool.
Mm.
Because right now to eat healthy is going to a salad place and you get some spinach and some this, and it's probably wilted, and you get 5 croutons and some dry grilled chicken. You're scared about how much dressing you put on it, and it's 18 or 22 bucks.
Right.
Let's call it is what it is, right?
Yep.
It is
Yep.
not fun.
Yeah.
And when I ate this little bowl, I was like, wait a minute, like nothing in there is processed. There's no dairy. All of the items are gluten-free. Like this is as close to Mother Nature behind a counter as I've ever seen. And that's something where, like, I never planned on being a restaurateur, but it's essentially a franchise is just a system. And it doesn't matter if you're getting a franchise for a workout place or a restaurant or a cell phone repair place. There's franchises that are cell phone repair places. All of them are just able to create a repeatable system across the entire country. And that's a skill set that I had. The real question was, did I want to give the next 3 to 10 years of my life to build this thing? Because the second you start taking on money from other people and make commitments to companies and stuff like that, there's a very serious moment that happens where my life changed. My life went from having a lot of free time and golfing a decent amount and all this kind of stuff to every day we are up and figuring out how to open more acai bowl places and how to serve more food and how to get more customers to unevolve. And so once that commitment was made, that's my why. And now it's how do we get more employees, more customers, more people that are part of our mission, and serve them delicious things that make them better.
Yeah. Now, I think about that, and I think there's a lot of back and forth of, well, what am I better suited at, right? If I'm an entrepreneur and I really like the freedom, the autonomy to just do whatever I want, when I want to do it, it's my vision, it's my mission, and that's the primary thing. Or now I'm tying up with somebody, which there's a lot of pros that come from that. I don't have to create all the infrastructure. I don't have to do all the research. I'm not a lone ranger anymore. I'm getting to partner. But you lose a little bit of autonomy and you lose a little bit of what it is that it's my mission and now it's an our mission, or maybe, someone is really steering that. So talk about that for you, going from really your whole life being your business, right? And not really having to worry about other people's mission and vision. And now, really having more of a team aspect and some of the pros and the cons for you there.
Yeah. I mean, I still get the freedom of owning my own, but if something happens at our stores, there's nobody to call other than me, other than our team and our people. But I like that, right?
Yeah.
I like this. Essentially we're given a clean slate to build the team that gets us to the end goal. Okay. So when I started my cell phone stores, I didn't have a lot of options. It was get in the store and you need to wear a lot of hats and do everything. And if you succeed at one, you can open number 2. Yes. And then maybe year 3, you can open number 3 if you're really lucky. Well, we just opened 5 in the last 14 months.
Wow.
And we have 1 a month scheduled on average next year, just in my territories. This doesn't include Everbowl Corporate. They're doing 1 or 2 a week. Yeah. But in my territories, because I bought the rights to Texas, and we're doing almost 1 a month will be next year at a minimum. And so it was a scale thing, and then building the team that could accomplish that scale. So in the cell phone days, I had to be the person and then eventually hire on a person. And eventually, in this case, I'm hiring the team and having the team build these stores faster and open these stores faster. And so, it's the same kind of idea, but it's just skipping a couple levels because of, fortunately, the past business experience that I had was successful enough that when I decided I wanted to do this, I called a few friends and family and they said, we're in. When you win for people and some other things, and we won for people in our real estate deals and our syndications. And so when we presented a new opportunity, people hopped on.
Yeah. Now talk a little bit about reputation in regards to everything we do, people take notice to, and people are seeing, and sometimes it's monetarily, sometimes it's just, hey, are you a good person? Are you acting with ethics? And that is what ends up making the choice for them of if they want to partner with you or not just the financial component, although that obviously is a piece of it. But talk a little bit about, hey, you've been able to build a nice resume over the last 15, 16 years of different investments, entrepreneurial journeys, and, why people would even say, yes, I want to, team up with you and join Sloan Capital.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, we all have a brand and a reputation, whether we want to or not. And so it's really important to understand how people look at us, how people are paying attention. And one of the ways, and I just made this change, honestly, as I started doing the Everbowl stuff, was that I started to document what I was doing through social media. Creating videos of our launches, walking people through the construction sites and showing all of that, because that actually weirdly helps with the reputation, right? Because rather than just being someone that talks about the stuff and whatever, you're now showing that you're doing it. And selling is storytelling, and the more that we can just show people what we're doing, we really don't have to sell people on the idea of supporting us. It's more like, oh, you're getting ready to open more restaurants. Hey, do you have any room in those ones? Okay, here's a wire. And then from that, what happens is they call, they're like, oh, you're part of that one. Oh, you're part, and as their friends or other people that they know, that when you have success, it then generates more success and more of that. But your reputation can go both ways.
Yeah.
Right. If I don't succeed for that initial group of investors, what are the odds that I'm going to get them to redo the next time? So if I had to give one piece of advice around that, I think one thing that happens a lot for entrepreneurs is we want to get involved in a lot of different things. And we need to be very, very cautious that, especially when you're dealing with other people's money, you need to make sure you win for them. And you should be waking up every single morning and going to bed every single night thinking about how do you win for the people that have entrusted you with dollars, because that's your reputation. Your reputation is that people trusted you with their hard-earned money. And if you choose to not put in the time and not put in the effort, then you shouldn't be surprised when people don't want to trust you again to do that. That's
really good. I love that. Now, the other thing is you had gone to this, whatever we want to call it, conference, mastermind, a grouping of people that, are obviously, go-getters, business-minded, future-focused. And I think today, more than ever, people are willing and wanting to share content. They're wanting to share ideas. You think back to starting your first cell phone business. I mean, you might have had two people in town that you could have called for a coffee, and if you'd buy them breakfast and all those things, maybe they'd give you 30 minutes of their time, and it wouldn't be, the information wasn't going to be pertinent to your business. It was just going to be general business info. Whereas in today, 2022, it's like, man, we can connect with people that are in our industry. We can connect with people that are in completely different industries, and we can get some of the best information possible. So, talk a little bit about some of the social connections you've been able to make and the impact that that's had on your growth and your development.
Yeah, I'll give a really quick little story. So every 2 years, the high school that I graduated from, they have a combined junior seniors economics class. And every 2 years they ask me to come in and speak for a day or two. And I feel so honored to go talk to these kids because I remember in that class someone talking. And so I look at it as my opportunity to really go help them. And one of the things that I talked about in my last talk with some of these students is social. And the reason it went down that path is it was brought up, and the teacher hosting the class stood up and said, social media is the biggest waste of time. Everyone in here needs to get off of it. Don't you dare. You're wasting your life, blah, 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 right? The normal speech that we hear from 60-year-olds.
Yep.
But here's the deal. Social is what you give to it. By me putting out content, by me showing what we're doing, by me telling our story, by investing into that, I have created hundreds of advocates and met hundreds of people that are out there trying to do the same things that I am. And what happened is we came full circle, because 30 minutes ago, we talked about being that person that's going against everybody.
Yeah.
But if you use social the right way, what you end up finding is a lot of people think more like you than you realize. And my craziness and loving to go start things when everybody else is closing, there's other people that are just as nuts as I am out there.
Yep.
So find them. You know, the crazy ones are the ones that actually make the biggest difference. And through this, we continue to add more and more people to this Everbowl family, whether they want to own a franchise, whether they want to invest into the stores that we're doing, whether they want to be a customer. And we're just continuing to talk about it, and all of us are doing it. And by doing so, more people are eating more healthy meals, and more people are investing, and more people are helping us open more businesses and create more jobs, which then continues it going more and more and more. So I hate this idea that kids are taught social's bad, don't do it. The caveat to that is if you sit back and you just consume,
yeah,
right? If you're just a consumer of social media, then I couldn't agree more, because now you're letting social dictate you. Yep. Whereas if you put yourself out there, you know, if I talk about my opinions, yes, there's going to be a few people that are like, I hate your opinion, you're wrong. But there's other people that are like, wait a minute. And also respect for having an opinion. Yeah. You know, in 2022, it's pretty easy to get in trouble for having any opinions. But the reality is we need people with conviction. We need people with opinions, and we need those people to communicate together. And social is a really great way to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Now, as Sloan Capital is created and started, you know, you mentioned, hey, there's just a few different people that have you know, said, hey, I like what you're doing. I want to put funds in. You know, what is kind of the mission vision of Sloan Capital? I mean, obviously, you know, the new Everbowl undertaking is a large part of the mission, but talk just about, you know, it in and of itself.
Yeah. So Sloan Capital is a mixture of a lot of investments and a lot of companies, but the overall mission is to kind of like what I just said of finding people where we see the world fairly similar, and then we compound together.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about, you know, over the next 20 to 30 to whoever knows how many years, because I don't think I'm ever going to retire again. It was boring the first time. I'm scared of when I do at older age.
Yeah.
Because you lose that drive, right? You lose that thing. And so I look at the next 20, 30, 40, however many years that I'm blessed to be on this spinning rock, that we're going to continue to compound and win for people that want to. But there's some rules with that, right? We're going to be cautious of who we help compound. I say it all the time, and I'm on social too. We have to make sure we don't make money for assholes.
Yeah.
Because if you believe in compound interest, then you should not be helping assholes compound, because that means that their assholeness will compound, right?
Yeah.
And so the more that I can find companies, find opportunities, and then collectively build a crew and build people together that help make these things amazing, you know, that to me is our end goal. And we're going to do it through being good landlords. We're going to do it through being good tenants. We're going to do it through creating good businesses, to being fair to our employees, to being, you know, fair to our investors, and creating things where we don't have to win at somebody else's expense. We can win by growing things and making things better together. And if, you know, listen, if we end up owning $1 billion worth of real estate that is all fairly priced, that people can live in and do business in and be successful, that's amazing. If we own hundreds of restaurants or hundreds of other businesses that are serving healthy meals and providing people jobs, like that's something that we can look in the mirror and smile, you know, and not like, and be part of making this earth and the people around us more successful too.
Yeah, that's really good. I love it, man. Well, Justin, are there any other pivotal moments or things you want to highlight in your story that, you know, as you kind of reflect back on and you think about, you know, all the different things you've been able to accomplish, but things that, you know, specific moments that helped you get here?
The best thing that I would say to anybody getting ready to go through this, or in the middle of this right now, is say yes to more things and get involved in more deals. Because that experience is at some point, you're always going to have your first deal, and it's going to be hard, and you're going to have learning things. But whether you wait till you're 50 or you do it when you're 15, you know, the processes of starting businesses and of going through investment theses and stuff is basically all the same.
Yeah.
You know, and so get the reps in, go through it, say yes, and figure it out. And then through that, you're going to become better, so that when you do it again, you're better. If I would have never opened my first cell phone store, you know, signing that lease was terrifying, dude. I mean, terrifying. I had no idea what most of those words meant. I didn't have a team of attorneys and things like that we have right now. It was terrifying. But that terrifying part was the learning and the growth and the building. And then when you go over budget on something and you learn, all of that is the experience. Because you can go to college for 100 years in a row, but the second you sign one lease, you're going to realize that, wait a minute, they didn't teach me most of those things. The second you have one of those HR issues, or you have this, or something happens, someone trips and falls in your store, what do? And that's the part that's the learning. That's the growth. That's the getting better. Every one of these issues is the ability that when it happens again, now it's like, I've already dealt with that 18 times. Now it's just another day in paradise. So get started, get involved in deals, work with friends. If you have other people around you that are doing deals, find a way to get involved with them. And just know that through the investing, you'll also be building your education on how to invest. And that's something that goes for years and years and years to come.
That's really good. And, the listeners of the show probably get tired of me talking about it, but what I want to just, make sure that we don't breeze over is, there's phases of life where saying yes to more is critical. When you're getting started, it's like you don't have a big array of people. You don't have a lot of social connections. You don't have a lot of business acumen. So the more things you can say yes to your point, the more at-bats you're going to get. The problem for most people, though, is they hold on to saying yes for too long after they've reached a certain point of they've gotten enough yeses. And now I have a trouble saying no to things that I should be saying no to, so I can focus on more yeses in my strategic lane.
Oh, I like that. No, you couldn't be more right, because so we use a book. I don't know if you ever read the book Chop Wood, Carry Water. But we use that. It's sitting right. I mean, I can see it within eyes reach of me right now. But, as we say yes to opening lots of businesses and getting going, then there reaches a phase of these businesses where you have to chop wood and carry water, where we have to keep our heads down and make amazing bowls, amazing customer experience, go get involved in the community and do those actions every day that equal the results. And just saying yes and hoping everything works. No, sometimes there is the phase that after you've taken a lot, now you got to chew for a while. Now you've got to digest for a while and get back to the point that you can take more on your plate. So, I love it, because I couldn't agree with you more. We're in that one of those phases right now, because we've opened up a lot of stores, and now we need to watch those stores get to stability, get the growth, watch the KPIs dial in, and then we're able, beginning next year, we'll get in that next phase of launching more, and then we'll settle and we'll digest and we'll chop wood and we'll carry water and we'll build them up. And that's how you build a great business, is you just you grow, stabilize, grow, stabilize, grow, try new things. Some things work, some things don't. Cast a lot of lines. Maybe you get some fish, maybe you don't. And then through that, continue to grow, and then make it great. Grow, make it great. Don't just grow and make it awful. Grow and make it great. Make sure those investors are winning. Make sure your team is winning. Make sure that everything's winning, so that as you grow, so does your network, so does those advocates, so does everything else along with it.
That's really good. That's really good. Well, Justin, I want to say thanks so much for being on, my man. Excited to, see your journey and continue to watch it. And who knows, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we'll probably have to have you back on. You'll have all, 50 spots in 50 Everall franchises opened up, and you'll be on to the next thing.
That's if that's the case, I'll have a big smile on my face. Let's do it.
All right, my man. Thank you.
Thank you.